Hello and welcome from us. Well, what a week. A little later on, we have this. Remember them? After their general election wipeout, the Lib Dems launched their mayoral campaign. We're talking to the new leader and the candidate for City Hall. The fight back starts here. With me here on the first programme back is Mike Freer, Conservative MP for Finchley and Golders Green, and Heidi Alexander, Labour MP for Lewisham East. And, well, anything else we should be talking about?
Well, new Shadow Secretary of State for Health.
Yeah, indeed. Anything you picked up particular of significance this week in London?
Oh, well, there's a huge amount going on, obviously, yeah. So it's been a very busy time.
What has it been like this week? You didn't expect this at all, did you?
No, it did come as a surprise to me, but it's a privilege to be asked to be Shadow Secretary of State for Health. It's something that people in London and across the country care about very deeply. And to be honest, the current government don't have a very good record on the NHS, and so it's very important that they are held to account going forward.
Within her first answer, highly political, Mike Freer, I'll come on to you in a moment, but you said earlier in the week that you had to think for a little while before you took it. Why?
Well, I was thinking for a couple of days before the leadership announcement about whether I was ready for the job, whether I had something to contribute. And then when I spoke to Jeremy on Sunday night, we had a good discussion.
Because you backed Andy Burnham, didn't you? For the
I did. I did back Andy, but I was obviously disappointed when he didn't get it. But
you were thinking about it for a while because you needed to think about it because of Jeremy Corbyn's politics, presumably. What are the areas that concern you?
Well, I think that I needed to be sure that I had something to contribute, and I think. Obviously, I was disappointed with the outcome, and I don't think I've been appointed to this job because I was Jeremy's #1 cheerleader, but because I think he feels that I can do a good job. And to be honest, that is all yesterday's news as far as I'm concerned. This is about the future of the Labour Party, the future of the country. I feel I have something to contribute. And I want to take the fight to this Conservative government and ensure that the Labour Party in 2020 has a really credible, ambitious but realistic vision to put before voters.
Mike Freer, the new team is shaping up. What have you made of this week, and what have you made of the member for Islington North, his first week in London?
Well, first of all, I think Heidi will bring some fresh energy to the Shadow Health portfolio. I think she's been a very vigorous campaigner on health issues in London, so I wish her well on that. I think that what we've seen this week is a slow start to the new leader finding his feet. He's clearly made some unforced errors. I don't underestimate him, and I think that whilst I don't think his appeal will be broad enough for the Labour Party to win, there will be a part of the country that will like his message, as it happens in Spain, as it happens in Greece. That anti-austerity, slightly cloud cuckoo land approach will resonate for some, but I don't think his appeal would be broad enough.
But you've seen what his involvement in this contest has done to membership, and then what it did to Labour's membership, particularly in London. And many people are saying and think that obviously Sadiq Khan has won that nomination for the mayoralty, at least partly off the back of that. There is momentum. Then it must be worrying.
Well, I think we saw the same under Blair. There was a boost in membership and momentum there, but whether it lasts is another issue. I think what we're seeing is a bit of a leap back to the 1980s in terms of the front bench and some of the policies that the Labour Party under Corbyn will be pursuing are policies that have been tried and found to be wanting in the 80s. And from our point of view, we're going to have that whole argument again as to why those far-left policies will fail. So, slow start, but I wouldn't underestimate him.
Bit of a rocky week, though, he's had. Would you agree?
Well, I think it's always very, very difficult when you start in a new job, and obviously this is a new job like no other. I think that we have a huge energy within the Labour Party at the moment. I think people are crying out for a new kind of politics. And
so
I think
he just needs to get his act together, and the team needs to get their act together quite soon to tap into that.
Yeah, I think what really appeals to people about Jeremy is his honesty and how direct he is. There's clearly a very important debate that needs to be had within the Labour Party about our policies going forward. I've always said to him that I will be honest with him about my views. but he will have my support in the task that is ahead of him. And I'm not saying it's all going to be easy, but I think it's really important that there is a strong, united
And we look forward to hearing
opposition.
all the differences, the disagreements are going to be over health policy. We won't put you under the microscope just yet. Anyway, let's move on. Let's turn our attention to a party that's hit rock bottom but insists it's on its way back. In the general election, the Lib Dems lost 6 of their 7 MPs in London. This week they announced that Assembly member Caroline Pidgeon would be their London mayoral candidate. She and they say the fight back begins now. There is some flash photography in this report by Raphael Sheridan.
It was almost complete oblivion for the Liberal Democrats early this year as their tally of MPs in the capital shrunk from 7 to just 1. Carl Shelton and Wallington MP Tom Brake is their sole remaining representative in the Commons. The Lib Dems came 4th in London, behind the Conservatives, Labour and UKIP, the latest in a poor string of results, 5th in London in the European elections and 4th in the last mayoral election. So what then are the chances for the party's newly confirmed candidate for mayor, Caroline Pidgeon, currently a member of the London Assembly and charged with the task of spearheading the proclaimed fight back this May? This is arguably the most important job of newly elected leader Tim Farron.
We've had 5,000 new members in London since May the 7th. We've been making council gains across London, and against all the odds, after, let's be honest, a devastating result for the Liberal Democrats on May the 7th, the Liberal Democrats are coming back in enormously spectacular fashion.
But whatever air of optimism the Liberal Democrats may hope to create this week, almost anything will seem like an improvement after sinking so low.
Sinking so low, he says. And Caroline Pidgeon is here. What are you going to do about this? I mean, it has been one of the worst time for the party, hasn't it? What are you going to try and do about this?
It hasn't been the easiest, but the fight back has already started since the general election. We've won 3 council by-elections in London, one of them a seat in the Tory heartlands in Twickenham. We'd never even held when Vince Cable was the MP. So it's already started, and we've seen a huge growth in our membership. And I'm hoping that I'll be able to invigorate the party in London, and we're fighting for every vote next year and every seat we can get on the Assembly as well as for the mayor.
And you got formally kind of confirmed or nominated this week. There'd been a shortlist of 2, and Dwayne Brooks, your opponent, dropped out because he wanted to do something else. It kind of, did it give the impression to some people, do you accept that this is a job or a position fighting for this, for the Liberal Democrats, that people aren't fighting that hard to get?
Not at all. 6 people applied to be our mayoral candidate. They chose to shortlist 2, and unfortunately my opponent had to drop out through a work commitment. But I still had a selection, and over 90% of members backed me. But I'm looking forward now. I'm looking forward to working with my Assembly candidates to have a really good campaign next year. And London is a Liberal city. We need some Liberal solutions to the problems we face.
If and you say you're looking forward, obviously to look forward and to try and work out or tell us what you think works, you need to get an idea of what went wrong. I mean, you've watched on from City Hall as we've seen local election bad results, lost all those MPs. What's gone wrong with the Liberal Democrat offer in the capital?
Well, I think, you know, coalition government didn't help us, and the policies and things that we did really well, we couldn't always get the message across. But we've got a new leader now, we're moving forward, and I think we'll be able to much more clearly get across what our policies are. And people now seeing what Conservatives alone are like governing in this country and the dreadful things that they're trying to put in some areas, we will start to see, actually, I think, some people coming back to us and wanting a Liberal London.
And what does, we've been talking about Jeremy Corbyn so far already, obviously, what does that do to the space that the Liberal Democrats might occupy? We've got a Conservative mayor, a Conservative government. If people were looking for a radical alternative, then aren't they much more likely to go with that, what Labour are offering at the moment? Where would you end up? Where are you going to place yourself?
I don't think so. I think that the centre ground is very much open at the moment. If Labour may well be lurching over to the left, I think we're very clear what we stand for about boosting housing in London, dealing with supply, dealing with the terrible air pollution we face, and tackling the issue of childcare in London. It's stopping women going back to work because of the costs and affordability and the flexibility of that. We're going to be putting forward some very clear policies that I think really will appeal to Londoners. I'm just an ordinary Londoner myself, going about my everyday life, trying to get my child to nursery, getting on the trains and the delays. I know the problems Londoners face, and I'm going to be putting forward a clear platform with the Liberal Democrats on how we can address those problems.
Mike Freer, Caroline mentions that obviously we're beginning to see what the effect of untrammelled conservatism is in the capital, and thus she feels that the Liberal Democrats could well benefit from people that feel you go too far.
Well, the mayor hasn't changed, so I'm not sure we're seeing untrammelled conservatism any different from, Mayor Boris Johnson's been in place for a long time. So we're not seeing any shift in policies from City Hall, and our record in London has been extremely good. I think where the Liberal Democrats will have some problem is differentiating themselves. In the past, they've been able to almost position themselves as to the left of the Labour Party, and now under Corbyn that ground has been firmly reclaimed. So if they're then going to have to reinvent themselves as a centrist party, I think there's going to be a significant disbelief on the doorsteps that they've got any real platform. I think it'll be a straight fight between ourselves and the Labour Party.
There's a potential problem here, Heidi, and I think Tim Farron has been saying, the Liberal Democrat leader has been saying that this week, that some Labour people, many Labour people, are going to perhaps say, we don't want to have part of this Jeremy Corbyn, Sadiq Khan ticket. We want to look for a centre-left alternative or somewhere in the middle, and the Liberal Democrats are back in business.
I think Sadiq Khan has a programme for London which will appeal across the board. He wants to tackle the crisis in housing to make sure that affordable housing is available. He wants to get to grips with the public transport problems that we experience and ensure that there are decent jobs in London which pay decent wages. And I think that Sadiq's story has very widespread appeal. He's the son of a bus driver, grew up on a council estate in London and is now running for one of the greatest jobs in the world. And I think that's incredibly positive.
A final point from Caroline. Imagine, OK, Sadiq Khan with his story and Zach Goldsmith, if we assume it's going to be. Where do you think you're going to end up in relation to those two? Do you think one's better than the other?
No, I'm out. I'm not interested in the other parties. I'm out to get as many Liberal Democrat votes I can get next year for both the Mayor and the Assembly, and we're going to have a strong Liberal platform for London that I hope will appeal to many Londoners.
Well, we'll be seeing a lot of you. Thanks very much indeed for turning up today. Now, we know at some stage soon the capital will receive its first Syrian refugees from the camps in the Middle East. London's councils have been in discussions with government about what it will mean, not least in terms of the costs and future funding. Our research suggests there's little spare capacity. We know of a firm pledge to house just 100 families so far, as Andrew Cryan reports.
The civil war in Syria has turned 9 million people into refugees. That's half the country's population. Most are still in the Middle East, like in this camp in Jordan, home to 90,000. But the last few weeks have seen thousands make their way to Europe, in particular Germany. Now, at least so far, the UK has largely avoided the type of disruption that you're seeing just over 20 miles across the English Channel in mainland Europe. To put it in perspective, Germany reckon they're going to take 1 million refugees from Syria this year. The UK has pledged to take an extra 20,000 over 5 years. So in terms of life in London, what, if any difference, is all of this going to make? At least in the short term, it's going to depend a lot on what your local authority decides to do.
Central government needs to take charge of resettling people, and it sets the overall numbers, and then local authorities have to bid to say, yes, we're happy to resettle people locally. So that's the urgent question, is at a local level, how many areas will step forward and say, yes, we can offer protection to those fleeing violence. We need local authorities to commit to resettling 50, 100, 200 people.
So, how many people are London's councils prepared to take? Sunday Politics asked all 33 London boroughs. 29 got back to us, of which 22 said they did have some capacity, although when pushed as to how many homes, only 7 had a number. Adding these together, it totals a firm commitment from London councils to house just 102 families, plus an additional 6 properties. Nearly half the total commitment came from just one borough, Brent. In contrast, some councils say they can't commit to taking any, including Bexley in south-east London. The council declined our request for an interview, although their decision is being backed by local UKIP councillors.
Bexley Council is at breaking point at the moment, and added pressure of additional people coming into the borough will cause problems with regards to housing and other local services.
Even councils who say they're happy to help warn that there are limits to what they can do. Hammersmith and Fulham councillor Ali Hashem is himself a Syrian refugee.
If we hadn't got refuge in the 1990s, it would be me today trying to get over with a dinghy with my young daughter. And that, just the thought of that terrifies me and says that this is something Britain has stood up for people who have fought against dictators, who have fought against oppression, who have fought for liberty since, especially during World War I and World War II.
But like everywhere else in London, housing in Hammersmith is under great pressure.
Our residents come first, their housing situation is resolved. Within our borough, we may not be able to take on refugees of a great number, but we are able to administratively welcome them in and find appropriate housing across the country.
But even if they're moved somewhere else in the country, could it be that once they're settled, refugees from around the UK and even around Europe decide to make their home in London?
The future of the asylum seekers who are settling in Germany and other countries will depend enormously on Germany and other countries' decisions about the papers they give them and whether they're giving them long-term right of abode or citizenship in those countries. But certainly, if over time most of them get citizenship in Germany, of course they can move to anywhere in the EU, including Britain. Britain, we know, is an attractive place for immigrants.
This week, the Prime Minister visited this British-funded refugee camp in the Middle East. His message? The UK is choosing to help refugees abroad rather than on British soil.
Mike, London's expanding population, all its existing, homeless problems, housing shortages, the pressures on infrastructure. It's not a great place, is it, to take on or house or make commitments to a large number of refugees?
London has an ability to, over history, just to absorb and expand and welcome those people who need help. And certainly my constituency is a prime example. But I think where we have to be careful is ensure that what we do is sustainable. We needn't rush in, because if we get it wrong, it could be catastrophic for London. So I think that's why London councils are being cautious. I believe there's a meeting next week with government, probably with the new minister who's overseeing the resettlement of refugees, so that when we take in vulnerable refugees, that we have proper places for them to live, that we've got school places, that we've got healthcare. So it's important that we get it right.
Are you worried about what your government's done, the commitment it's made, really? Because if you're really honest, you must be worried because they haven't given any commitment to where funding's going to come after that first year.
Well, there's been a commitment to help local authorities. What we haven't yet seen is the exact amounts, and certainly I'm in contact with my council in Barnet as to, because we're a big borough in Barnet, and we've got a track record of, it's a very multicultural and welcoming borough, but we've got to get it right. So I'm hoping that Richard Harrington, the new minister, who is a good choice on this, will be able to pull all of the strings together to make sure that local authorities across the country, this can't be just a London problem.
What's Barnet's Barnet's quite happy to do it, isn't it?
Barnet has said that they are looking to taking families. They haven't yet been able to find the accommodation, and that's the danger, because we've got existing refugees currently waiting to be rehoused, and if you leapfrog that, then that just causes all sorts of problems. So we've got to make sure that we have suitable accommodation at the right time, so it's a sustainable solution. Heidi,
however indignant, however moved people might be by what they see, realism and the necessity to build communities as well. Not an easy thing to do if you're bringing people into an already quite overcrowded city.
I think that's fair, and I also think that Mike has made some reasonable points about the practicalities of all of this. But I do feel that David Cameron and this government have taken a very long time to get to this position. 2 years ago, I was asking the Prime Minister about the asylum policies in relation to Syria, and it feels like it's taken a very long time for him to accept that we have some responsibilities in this crisis. It was obvious 2 years ago that people were fleeing for their lives, and I think we should have acted sooner. I think that in the rush to catch up with public opinion, because let's be honest, David Cameron was running scared of this issue, and it's only recently that he has agreed to act. I think in the rush to do it, what we must make sure is that we get the arrangements in place properly, so it's properly planned.
Mike.
No, I think that's unfair. What David Cameron is always very good is very calm in a crisis. And he said that the solution is not to simply open our borders, however emotional and attractive response that is. You cannot resettle half of the population of Syria, and that's why we are an exemplary donor to the camps supporting refugees on the border. The solution is to ensure we try and get Syria restabilised, and those people most vulnerable left behind in the camps are the ones that are given the most support. And that's what David Cameron has said he will do, and that's what we've been doing. supporting those in the camps and whilst trying to get Syria stable.
And the reality is a result in the general election shows that people have been very unhappy about the pressure on public services and the issue of immigration, albeit we know it's completely different from a refugee humanitarian crisis.
The reality is countries such as Germany and Sweden were taking tens of thousands of refugees a long time ago, and our country has not lived up to its responsibilities to give some people a home here. This isn't an either-or. It's fantastic that we've made the contribution to the aid effort in the refugee camps, but we should have acted sooner.
OK, well, we'll be watching closely as this process takes place over the coming weeks and months. It's time now for the rest of the political news in 60 seconds.
Boris Johnson was forced to abandon Mayor's question time after taxi drivers began shouting from the public gallery when he branded them Luddites. Hundreds of cabbies had gathered at City Hall amid ongoing criticism of Transport for London's handling of regulation for private hire car companies, including the taxi app Uber. West Ham say they are disappointed with a ruling that the terms of their rental of the Olympic Stadium from next season should be made public. The London Legacy Development Corporation, which manages the publicly owned stadium, has been told to publish details of the move. Homeowners in West London whose properties lie in the path of a proposed third runway for Heathrow have taken their fight to the people in charge. Some residents of Hillingdon could have their properties compulsorily purchased for demolition. In retaliation, they targeted the Director of Corporate Responsibility's house by laying a giant plastic runway across his drive.
Let's talk about Heathrow, Mike. Liam Fox this week writing, the capital mustn't be allowed to dominate a debate that is about the economic future of the entire UK. You know, Heathrow really does need to be expanded for places like the southwest of England and so on. Of course, you support Heathrow expansion too. So music to your ears, yeah?
The bottom line is, unless you're going to build a brand new 4-runway airport somewhere to serve London, Heathrow really is the only sensible alternative. It's not perfect. You wouldn't build it there today. It is where it is. And Heathrow is important to our economy, and we need to crack on and deal with it. I know that's not going to make me popular in West London, but for the sake of the UK economy and the London economy and the South East economy, we've just got to crack on and bite the bullet.
And for purely political reasons, very briefly, Heidi Alexander, Sadiq Khan might know that's the case as well, but changes his mind and says, no, we shouldn't have a third runway. You agree with him, presumably?
I'm not sure that it's for political reasons. I think if you look at the Howard Davis report into airport capacity in the South East, what he did was underestimate the economic advantages of expanding Gatwick. And I think that Gatwick is a very, very interesting proposition with regard to addressing this problem.
That's all we have time for this week. We'll be coming back to that issue, I think, to you both. Thanks very much indeed. Andrew, it's back to you.